On July 12, 2022, during a routine surveillance mission in the Middle East, an American drone called, and in the process, 9 Reapers came across something. Nobody was supposed to see a swiftly moving silver spear with no visible engines or exhaust. It was so strange. It seems that the drone operator abandoned their initial objective and started tracking this mysterious object, trying to figure out what in the world it was. This is just one of the new videos from a special website that the U.S. Department of Defense made public after the sensation in Congress, National Hearings of July 26, 23. That was when David Groupshop, a former intelligence agent, testified under oath, claiming that the U.S. government isn't just hiding a bunch of data on sightings of these mysterious flying objects. According to Groups, the Department of Defense has long possessed the craft and is trying to reverse engineer the incredible, out-of-this-world technology. Could it be that the stories of your UFOs, which have been dismissed as optical illusions or pure fiction for decades, actually have a real basis after all? All videos of these bizarre things in the sky are now being posted not only by random witnesses, but also by government agencies like U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Moreover, NASA has officially joined the investigation into what on earth is going on. In this video, you'll find out what incredible tricks the UFOs of all eras performed in the sky. Who managed to catch a glimpse of their pilots? Could it be that each one of us has the power to summon flying saucers? Oh, what encounters have they been keeping from us all these years? David Goose, his testimony alone wouldn't have had such an impact without the deed. You have your own countermeasures involving American military pilots. One of them, retired Commander David Forres, spoke at the same congressional hearing here. Earrings is a graduate of the elite Navy fighter pilot school known as Top Gun. Get the same one Tom Cruise made famous in those movies in November of 2000 for free, because he was aboard at the Border Nimitz-class aircraft carrier during exercises in the Pacific Ocean Commander. And the renowned Black Aces Strike Squadron on November 14, about 160 kilometers southwest of San Diego. The weather was perfect for maneuvers, and yet Uber and his wingman Lieutenant, Alex Dyrich, were scrambling for a real alert on a missile cruiser now. The same U.S. Princeton part of the same carrier group was equipped with super advanced radar, so it picked up something similar to, I quote, multiple anomalous aerial vehicles. Some of these objects descended from the stratosphere to the ocean surface in mere seconds. Started radically moving around and instantly changing direction. No human-made aircraft can do that. The operators of the Princeton initially thought it might be radar artifacts, but even after rebooting the equipment, those mysterious blips didn't vanish. That's why they sent Favor and Diedrich to intercept, and with those seasoned pilots witnessing that day, they have been hunting them ever since. None far but a strange cross-shaped disturbance on the water surface. A long white oval-shaped object was darting. Luckily, it had no wings, visible engines, or markings, according to Freevert. The bubbling wonder area was about the size of a Boeing 747 in the zipping tic-tac. The pilot's cold was just a bit smaller than that of the Super Hornet fighter jet, which is roughly 15 meters long. However, Winfrey were approached, and this mysterious thing simply dashed to the horizon and disappeared. This very moment was caught on the declassified video from a fighter jet infrared camera. You can see how the object instantly invades capture. For about 3 seconds later, radar operators on the Princeton picked up Freevert's tic-tac nearly 100 kilometers away from that spot. In other words, the object accelerated to over 30 kilometers per second in an instant in its total immunity to atmospheric resistance. Stunts aren't the most unbelievable part here. Modern rockets take dozens of minutes to reach much lower speeds, subjecting them to the crude, too strong G-forces of up to 3 times the Earth's gravity. An unprepared person would pass out with much less acceleration. But the tic-tacs noticed by Free and Dyrich correspond to an acceleration of over 3,000 G, which neither a human pilot nor any aircraft structure could withstand. David Favor and Alex Dyrich detailed everything they saw in a post-flight reply. It attaching instrument readings to it. However, Naval Command simply filed these documents away in the archives. No investigation was launched whatsoever. Was that because deep within the Pentagon they already knew what was flying over the ocean mean way? While pilots began countering UFOs more frequently in the summer of 2014, the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt was participating in exercises in the Atlantic Ocean not far from the shores of Virginia, and it was accompanied by a whole fleet of unidentified objects, a gun to the point where one of them zoomed right between 2 fighter jets that were flying closely together following protocol. The pilots reported this incident to their superiors, describing the object as a cube inside a train. Many 25 pilots from the same aircraft carrier recorded these video images. Strange objects not only move with incredible speed but also flip over. Lieutenant Ryan Graves, who personally spoke to the witness pilot and revealed during congressional hearings that your group commander, after watching about 5 seconds of the video, simply walked out of the room without saying a word. This same wall of silence consistently greeted all reports from naval pilots about seeing identified objects, according to Graves, during training exercises. Says the pilots encountered your UFOs almost daily, though since they weren't getting any feedback, the pilots eventually stopped reporting such incidents. It feels like they were encouraged to keep their mouths shut. One of the most recent pieces of declassified footage was filmed by an Theater in the 21st century. Did you notice the time in detail in official documents available to the public? It's cold, an unidentified aerial phenomena. It seems like the Pentagon is doing everything it can to avoid using the term UFO, but now with leaks. In the testimony of numerous whistleblowers, we know for sure that there's something unexplainable flying in our skies right now. So what can we learn from the most plausible counters from the past that the gullible public has long dismissed as new? Nonsense, let me tell you. The Roswell incident has been shrouded in so many myths that it's impossible to study with any semblance of objectivity. A completely different story is the contact that gave birth to the term flying saucers. It happened on June 24, 1947 in the state of Washington. Businessman Kenneth Arnold was cruising over the Cascade Mountains when his small aircraft went out of the blue. He spotted a bright flash to the left, and following it, he saw a formation of 9 disc-shaped objects zipping over the mountain ridge at breakneck speed. An experienced pilot, they were flying at a speed of at least 1,900 kilometers per hour back then. In 1947, the fastest plane on Earth was the Bell X, which had just broken the sound barrier, hitting a record speed of 1,127 kilometers per hour. Leader in an interview, I've guessed he might have accidentally witnessed some experimental US Air Force saucer-shaped gadget soon afterwards, or no guns. And for a little chat at an airbase in California, after talking to the military, I concluded that the man indeed saw something busy. The trouble was that they themselves had no idea what it could be, so they brushed off the whole incident as a mirage. But it was already too late, and stories and off a whole avalanche of reports about flying saucers in many of these reports shockingly echo the modern-day accounts from naval pilots about those so-called tic-tacs, weird talking, immense speed lightning, fast direction changes with shocking G-forces, and again, no signs of any engines. All of this pushed the US military to launch the super-secret Project Sonic to figure out just how much of a threat these flying saucers might be at the Pentagon. Their biggest fear was that supersonic gadgets might turn out to be some super sneaky Soviet plans. However, the report's authors couldn't find any confirmation for. Instead, they assumed that the most explicable cases could really be contact with extraterrestrial spaceships, and even though the top brass at the Pentagon furiously rejected this conclusion, and shut down the project report's view as a full sightings camped. Pouring in on May 24, 1949, a group of 5 civilians was fishing on the banks of the Roman River in Oregon when suddenly one of them noticed a strange flickering object hovering about 1.5 kilometers above the ground. This estimation was made possible thanks to one fish. And who bothered to bring binoculars? The binoculars also revealed that the disc-shaped object was clearly made of metal, and had a horizontal edge with sections and a weird protrusion vaguely resembling an aircraft's keel in terms of size. The disc could be compared to a 47 transport plane, with a diameter of around 20 meters. Although the UFO had no visible engines that didn't stop it from swiftly vanishing beyond the horizon at supersonic speed, all in complete silence. The most astonishing part of this incident was that all of its participants were scientists from government organizations, including an aeronautical laboratory, so suggesting they could mistake a regular aeroplane for a UFO is simply out of the question. Witnesses decided to share this story with their superiors and even drew detailed sketches of the object. However, the military told the scientists they had actually seen the flight of a radar kite. They kept insisting, even though it looked completely different, and they just couldn't maneuver like that. The witnesses, rejected this conclusion but didn't go to the press, so there's no way we can blame them for being attention seekers. The incident at the Rote River only became known in 1975 after the government classified materials from the legendary Project Blue Book, which replaced the Project Sign with its framework over 22 years ago. Experts studied more than 12,500 potential contacts, and in the end, 701 of them remained without a clear explanation. That's more than 5% of the total, well beyond any statistical margin of error. On average, that's 32 contacts per year, and moreover, hundreds of very strange objects in Project Blue Book are attributed to weather balloons and other civilian and military aerostats. However, an incident that took place in the White Sands Desert, New Mexico, in April of 1999, calls into question all of these conclusions. A group of 5 Navy officers was launching and watching their spy below when they suddenly noticed an old glowing object rapidly flying at high altitudes across the sky. When they looked through their telescope, the officers realized it wasn't a weather balloon but something metallic yet without any visible engines. But what truly shocked the observers was that this UFO came to an abrupt halt. It instantly shot vertically upwards. Stats are physically incapable of such maneuvers, but anyway, in 1969, they closed Project Blue Book, which had documented hundreds of such phone contacts from David Gross's testimony during congressional hearings. It appears that around that time, the Pentagon initiated a deliberate public campaign to discredit all reports of strange objects in the sky because, even then, the American military authorities, since the real threat, had nothing to counter. Some confirmed close encounters with UFOs really seemed like an alien invasion around midnight on July 19, 1915, in the Washington National Airport Control Tower. Ordered a group of 7 flying objects moving towards the southeast of the capital since no aircraft were supposed to be in that area. The controllers thought it was a radar glitch and rebooted the equipment, but the strange blips only multiplied on top of that, and they began erratic maneuvers that were sharp. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Civilian pilots confirmed they were observing these frantic, glowing spheres in the sky. Some of them zoomed at incredible speeds right over the White House and the Capitol building, just like in those alien invasion movies. It was so serious that the therefore scrambled to Starfire fighter jets the fastest set the time for interception, but as soon as the planes approached the UFOs, the saucers simply vanished. However, military radars tracked them racing beyond the horizon at speeds exceeding 10,000 kilometers per. After running low on fuel, the interceptors returned to base, and those promptly return, continuing to fly almost until morning would. Is this, if not a demonstration of absolute superiority in any case, a clear and meaningful contact way? With the pilot exactly 1 week later, the glowing spheres filled the night sky over Washington once again. At this time, many locals saw them to John S. Cadams, Major General of the U.S. Air Force, and had to make a statement on behalf of the Pentagon 2 days later, according to him, about the strange radar. Blips were explained by a rare atmospheric phenomenon where cold air bubbles trade in 2 layers of air above the ground. The glowing objects were nothing more than stars and leaves. However, this couldn't possibly be true if both radars and pilots observed the object sign continuously in the same locations. Wasn't this just a clumsy attempt by the Pentagon to hide from the public a threat that the military themselves just didn't yet understand? Back in 1952, 12 years later, their attitude had clearly changed when something very similar to an alien landing that happened in New Mexico. Your full contact is considered the most well-documented in the history of observations, and therefore seems especially scary on April 24, 1964, on the outskirts of the town of Support for our New Mexico police officer Money the Moore was pursuing a speed violator, then out of nowhere, right just above the ground, he heard a loud explosion followed by an orange-blue flash. Zamora immediately stopped the pursuit and hurried towards the flash. The police officer thought it might be a dynamite explosion or a crashing plane, but when he peered over the nearest hill, he saw a strange oval-shaped thing about 150 meters in front of him, resting on 4 legs on the crap side. The officer noticed a mysterious bright red symbol, something like an error throw in a semicircle, and soon some responded to crew members dressed all in white, whom he described as either short adults or children. One of them immediately noticed the policeman and seemed quite surprised by his presence. The pilots quickly jumped back into their craft in this. The same orange-blue flames began to spew out from its lower part. The object was making such a deafening roar that the more he feared it might explode, the more he ran away. However, the object then hovered in complete silence. It away beyond the horizon just like the glowing spheres over Washington, and 1952 in the modern tic-tacs over the ocean wasting no time. Zamora called his fellow officers to the scene and together they discovered many burnt plants, and for distinct him in the ground soon a commission of the U.S. Air Force officers led by Captain Richard Holder were on site meticulously documenting all of the findings, including numerous strange footprints overlooked by the police. It was obvious that someone or something had indeed been here. Thousands of experimental devices from the nearby White Sands proving ground. In the meantime, NASA was testing their surveyor problem for a lunar landing in the same area, and the probe rocket engines were very similar to what I have described. The catch was that it was a pilotless drone. Remotely controlled, moreover, a probe designed for the moon's gravity couldn't possibly have flown 150 kilometers to the outskirts of Socorro. Naturally, skeptics were quick to suggest that they had simply fabricated the story and thought the evidence for a press release and seizure. Although Air Force officers noticed that he appeared pale and deeply shaken by the incident, some more were famous for his integrity, sobriety, and modesty, and even after a long period of time, he very reluctantly talked to the press about you. Phone counter. Finally, several people in the Sapporo area reported seeing the streamed craft that very day. The experts from Project Blue Book considered various theories, including a prank by chemistry students with a weather balloon, but the more dismissed, the more the Socorro wins. That he to his unidentified what if it wasn't an alien reconnaissance mission interrupted by an accidental witness. Interestingly, during those days, Captain Holder, who was investigating the squirrel incident, received a call from an General at the Joint Chief of Staff's War Room, who thoroughly such an him about the UFO encounter. Could it be that the Pentagon really he and Invasion Bradley were attempting to track the alien craft to potentially shoot it down with a missile? Judging by David Goose's testimony, your phone could very well have been one of those captured specimens whose now logic Pentagon engineers had been struggling with it for decades, especially since Greece also mentioned it in the incident. They could be seen as the aliens responded on March 16, 1967, at the Maelstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Guards spotted several strange lights that again were chemically darting around and abruptly changing direction. Then out of nowhere, the base operators lost control of 10 ballistic nuclear missiles in their silos, and they could not regain control for an entire day. The Pentagon kept the monster minutes in tightly and the wraps, and it's hardly a surprise because it just proves our complete helplessness against these and the debts you have owed. In fact, you seem to be able to do anything they want, but if so, why haven't we been conquered by aliens yet? Most likely, it's because the true motives of what UFO pilots are entirely different from what we imagine. To understand them, they will have to dig even deeper. Hundreds of cases of people being abducted by aliens are often dismissed as fake stories coming from attention-seeking weirdos for the story of Barney and Benny Hill, which has several details that are hard to write off as wild imagination. Late in the evening of September 19th, 19th, and 60th, the couple was driving south to the town of Lancaster, New Hampshire, when a baby thought she'd spotted a job. Hey, maybe you, but the glowing dot didn't fall like it was randomly moving from side to side. The Hills even pulled over to get a better look at the object through binoculars. Baby saw something closely resembling the ridge disk that puzzled scientists. A rogue river in 1949. Hills resumed their journey, but the UFO started getting closer and eventually hovered less than 100 meters in front of their car, not making a single sound. Barney wasn't scared, so he stepped forward with his pistol to realize that the edge of the disc was made up of viewing windows in law. There were at least 8 mysterious figures watching him and Betty. Soon all of them except for one disappeared, and someone distinctly said, "Stay where you are." There was an unsettling buzzing sound, and then the Hills suddenly found themselves back in their car, driving a long, totally deserted road. When they got home, they discovered that his dress was torn, his new shoes had heads-carved toes, and both of their wristwatches had stopped. Plus, their journey had taken 2 hours longer than usual. Soon, they began having an incredibly vivid dream. James, where their car was surrounded by short creatures who then led the couple into the woods. Well, they were in a trance-like state. A month later, the Hills told astronaut Mitchell they were bumped there. "You are at the phone counter, but you can't recall anything from the missing 2 hours." It was as if they had a mental block. Fuck those memories. Nevertheless, the couple tried to carry on as if nothing had happened, and it wasn't until several years later that they agreed to a hypnosis session with Dr. Benjamin Simon to recover their memories. That's when terrifying episodes of medical experiments occurred with the aliens. Conducted on the poor family surfaced, however, Dr. Simon believed those were just the couple's collective fantasies, and one detail caught the attention of scientists, a star map that many claim to have seen on the alien craft after extensive calculations. Mitchell and others who drew numbers concluded that this was what the night sky would look like with a figure like the double star system located 39 light-years away from Earth, although renowned scientist Carl Sagan was skeptical about these findings. Each of the stars in Zeta Red July is very similar to our Sun in that there could well be undiscovered exoplanets with Earth-like conditions. The real question is, did the extraterrestrials really make this journey, just to run medical experiments on humans? On the flip side, if they possessed mind control techniques and even telepathy, as suggested by the Hill accounts, maybe that's nothing more than a deliberate trick to cover up the true intentions of these visitors from distant star systems. Dr. Stephen Graham believes he knows the answer to this question. As ships of different extraterrestrial civilizations come to Earth every now and then, this explains the variations in their appearances. This is strongly criticized, as the Pentagon for viewing UFOs is a threat. He is sure that the extraterrestrials have a peaceful purpose to find among inhabitants of those mentally prepared for contact. Well, the government forms commissions, and towards hearings you have are actually waiting for signal from Mars. That's why Greer found in an organization whose goal is not just collecting sightings of UFOs but making them reappear in the sky. The Doctor and his followers claim that through meditative telepathic techniques they've already contacted you have both captured the whole process on video dozens of times. However, experts have doubts about this footage, and it's not quite clear why. You has never seen UFOs in broad daylight, but if we assume that Greek followers aren't lying, just all of this reminds you of a religion where only the chosen ones can communicate with the day through specific rituals. After all, such teachings have existed on Earth for thousands of years. And of years in the biblical book of the prophet Ezekiel, there's a very interesting passage describing the protagonist's contact with the Lord himself. The Spirit lifted me up, and I heard behind me a loud rumbling sound as the glory of the Lord rose from the place where I was standing. Sounds odd, doesn't it? The thing is, in the original Hebrew text, the word glory sounds like combat, but that's just one of its meanings. It can also be translated as a heavy object. The different, I heard a loud rumbling sound behind me. The heavy object of the Lord rose from the place where I was standing. It's suspiciously similar to the money's account. Isn't it in the book of Exodus? It gets even more intriguing. God tells Moses that when his goal. Laurie Moore says that when a heavy object passes by, you must take cover behind a rock to avoid being harmed by the heat. Add to this the accounts of Roman historians about erratic moving lights in the sky during the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, and we get the obvious conclusion that neither David Grew nor even Dr. Greer dares to make maybe I will contact with the creatures piloting UFOs didn't just begin. Perhaps it has shaped our entire civilization. However, who sent these guests kitten from other planets? Gruesome self-speculate. Did you know that behind your UFOs could very well be people of Earth from different dimensions, perhaps even from the future? What if our descendants, hundreds of years from now, invented a time machine and decided to check out what strange objects were bothering humanity in the 20th century? That to give themselves away, they created flying machines that closely resembled these. You can afford But when they arrived at the scenes of the most famous encounters, they found no one there except for baffled people of that era. Realizing this, humans from the future began using your phone. Encounters is a cover for their investigations into the past. They probably don't even understand why their spacecraft needs to maneuver chaotically in flight, but they have to repeat these movements to avoid creating a time paradox. So what do you think, who or why? What have we made contact with?